You're listening to Amplified, presented by Lurie Children's. Transcripts of this and all episodes can be found at luriechildrens.org/amplified. Humans are born with the ability to communicate in a way no other species even comes close to. It involves grammar, semantics, humor, slang, sarcasm. It can be spoken, signed, or written. Yet it's so natural, we don't even think about it. Making friends, playing on a team, interviewing for jobs, conversing with colleagues, resolving conflicts, and maintaining all forms of relationships hinge on good communication skills. My name is Katie Kalala, and I'm a pediatric audiologist at the Ann and Robert H. Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, formerly named Children's Memorial Hospital. As a clinician, I diagnose and provide intervention for infants and children with hearing loss, so they can communicate and connect with the people and world around them. Whether it be spoken language, sign language, or even a communication board, most infants and young children crave communicating with the world around them. It's a large part of what drove me to this field. I have always been fascinated with the natural perseverance of humans to communicate. Fetuses as early as 25 weeks have been recorded responding to sound, and infants spend about a year listening before uttering their first word. A whole year of listening to speech and laughter and crying and songs before they even produce their own piece of language. But what happens when that ability to learn language is compromised by congenital hearing loss? Welcome to Amplified. This is a story about communication, connection, and love beyond adversity. Our heroine, Catherine Radosevich, Katie for short, was born in 1988 in Naperville, Illinois, to parents Rudy, a lawyer, and Eileen, a homemaker. I have been fortunate to know Katie for a long time before she agreed to this podcast. And there are so many things I would love to tell you about her right away. But it's not my story to tell. So we begin our journey by listening to the first time I sat down with Katie, Rudy, and Eileen. Can you believe it's the 30-year anniversary of Katie's diagnosis?
I know. It's hard to put that in perspective. You're right. It's really crazy. 30 years, Katie. It's 30 years right now.
You still have curly hair, though, so some things haven't changed.
And the same great smile.
So tell me about the day she was diagnosed.
Well, there was time leading up to that. And that was something that we had been talking to Katie's pediatrician about prior to her second sister being born, or her younger sister. Katie has two younger sisters now, but there have been times where we suspected, but she was so good at still had her language. Still, the pediatrician told us that she was just kind of in the lower range of the number of words, but still within normal. And then her sister Julie was born, and we were heading up the stairs for bedtime and bath time. And her dad, Rudy, had her on his shoulders and started talking to her, and she brought her whole body around and looked at his mouth and looked at his face. And we both just said it at the same time. She's reading your lips. And that got us really the fire lit. And we went to Children's, and they did a initial hearing screening in the booth, and the audiologist was amazing. Nailed it almost to a T what your loss was. And then we went to the hospital shortly after that for the ABR. Mm-hmm. And that day was it. My memories are few and far between these days, but that day just sticks in my mind so strongly because it was so foreign it was foreign for me. Katie had a light sedation, and our cute little curly-haired 2.5-year-old was. They put electrodes on her, and there was a computer screen, which 30 years ago felt like we were in this futuristic setting, and there in front of us, the audiologist showed us where you started to respond to sound and showed us where the norm would be. And here you were at 65 and above that. But mostly both ears were at 65 decibels. And I had an out-of-body experience. And I haven't had one since. I saw myself below me, and I went up into the corner of the room because it was just overwhelming. And I kept thinking, what does this mean for our sweet Katie?
This diagnosis was devastating. Clinically, Katie's hearing loss would have been described as moderately severe to severe sensorineural hearing loss. Functionally, this meant Katie could only detect speech if someone was talking loudly, but she was consistently missing most speech cues and likely wasn't understanding much. As you can hear, Rudy and Eileen have clear, articulate speaking voices, but that wasn't enough to provide the language input needed to develop typical speech and language skills. Without timely intervention, Katie was at risk for a significant speech and language delay, and the impact of the hearing loss could be irreparable.
And from that point on, Children's was just amazing. They fitted you with aids, and we got in the car that day, and you were asleep in the car seat, and we were driving back home, and I said to your dad, I was like, how does this work? How are we going to do this? And he said, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And you sure helped us figure it out.
Rudy, what was it like for you learning about the diagnosis?
Back 30 years ago, there wasn't the internet where you could jump online and learn things quickly. So the ignorance that we walked into that room with was profound. And you don't know anything. You don't know anything about adaptive services. You don't know anything about support. You don't know anything about hearing aids except that's what old people wear. So, and it wasn't like Katie was unresponsive when she was younger. You know, she would ignore us at times, and we thought she was just ignoring us because when we raised our voice and barked a little bit, she'd turn around and respond, not realizing that she wasn't able to hear us. And you would, back at the time, I would think back over the previous 2 years and think, oh my God, it wasn't like she was ignoring us. She just couldn't hear us. And that was not devastating, but heartbreaking in a sense, because you want to do everything for your kid that you can. And when we would always tell her as she was growing up, you know, you don't know what you're not hearing if you're not hearing it. And the same thing for us. We didn't know that she wasn't hearing because we didn't know she wasn't hearing. But we were fairly dedicated to doing whatever it was we needed to do to both educate ourselves and help our daughter.
And I give you a lot of credit for pushing forward with the hearing test, even though it sounds like the pediatrician didn't align with your concerns, because there's now research that shows that parent concern is actually a high percentage of children diagnosing a child with hearing loss, especially one who passed the newborn hearing screen. And now, you know, this is a case where the newborn hearing screening wasn't even around yet.
Right.
So good for you for going with your gut. And I think a lot of parents need to know that's sometimes what they need to do if there's a concern.
Absolutely. And we also, she was exposed to a lot of family and close friends who not a single, whenever we would discuss it prior to the diagnosis, to 100% said, oh, she's fine.
Even after you told them about the diagnosis?
No.
Okay.
No, after the diagnosis.
Her grandmother blamed it on hot dogs, eating too many hot dogs.
There's definitely no link
there's a
to
story
support
there.
that.
There is a story there. That was that same day too. That was a very emotional day. So our appointment at the hospital was after lunch, and we were driving in from Naperville. We had a long time, so we were depriving her of her nap, and we had a 2-month-old. My mom came over and was holding her sister Julie in her arms. We were in the kitchen, and Katie was in her high chair and I was giving her lunch, and normal lunch at that time. Katie just loved hot dogs. And so she was having her lunch hot dog. And my mom is this she was ahead of her time, and everything needed to be like organic and whole type foods. And it was just totally upsetting her to see that she was eating a hot dog. And she knew that Katie ate them all the time. And so I said to her, well, she kept saying to me, I think you're going to find out she's fine. She's fine. And finally, my mom said, because she was just very concerned also, I know. And she said, well, if I ate hot dogs every day, I probably couldn't hear either.
Oh, no. No.
And so it was just very fortunate, a number of things, because my mom is still alive now. And she lived through that day because she was holding our infant, and there was physically a table between us, because I actually thought about lunging at her, but
instead she said, Mom, trust me.
I said,
if it's the hot dog, she'll never have another hot dog.
Yeah,
again.
I said,
but I don't think it's the
we're
hot
going to
dogs.
ask the doctor. I did. I just took a deep breath and said, we'll ask the doctor.
Good for you.
If it's the hot dogs.
You took the high road. So Katie's diagnosed, and then in a matter of weeks, she gets hearing aids. So what was it like all of a sudden coming home with all this new equipment and getting used to that?
We were fortunate, I think, that Katie adapted to her hearing aids very well. I remember the first day she came home with her hearing aids, went into the kitchen and heard the dishwasher for the first time, said, "What's that?" And then would hear other sounds, go, "What's that?"
The
What's
doorbell.
That? So she liked her hearing aids because she could hear. So we never had a problem with her wanting to yank her hearing aids out and not liking her hearing aids. One of the little signs I have in my office that I got from her when she was in preschool, they asked what you can do. And the teacher would write it down. One thing, I like to go to the park. I can color. I can jump rope. I can hear better with my hearing aids. And I keep that in my office for 30 years. It's like, oh my God, that's exactly right. So it's a lot. And I developed I should have patented this, a little device to keep her hearing aids so we wouldn't lose them. I took some fine fishing line and tied them to the stem of the hearing aid, and then put them to a clip in the back of her shirt so she would never lose her hearing aids. And she, besides one lake accident, never lost a hearing aid. And since they're not covered by insurance, that was a good thing.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me about how you used the piano to help her get used to her hearing aids as well.
Yeah, we bought a piano. We bought a piano. And the reason was it was a birthday for Eileen. Eileen paid the piano as a kid. And I thought, piano, that would be a good thing for Katie to help her discriminate sound. So we bought a piano. She took piano lessons. Got to the point where when her middle sister was doing a talent show thing in middle school, singing, because she has a very nice voice, Katie was playing the piano as an accompanist. And I think the piano really helped. And she took piano lessons, liked taking piano lessons. And, when you hit the wrong note with a piano, it's still a note. So it's not as bad as playing the trumpet.
True. I cannot stress enough how progressive this was for the 90s. Research about the benefits of music therapy for individuals with hearing loss was in its infancy at that time. Today, music therapy has been shown to improve speech perception abilities for those with hearing loss. And Katie, you were so young at the time when you got hearing aids, 2.5, but do you have any memories of when you first got your hearing aids?
So from when I first got my hearing aids, no. But one of my earliest memories that I do have is the first time that I mastered putting my hearing aids in by myself. And I remember I was standing in front of my dresser mirror, just trying to jam these ear molds in, like get everything in place. And when I finally did it, I ran downstairs. And, it was just kind of an aha moment. And that was so cool for me, because that was, kind of the start of that independent journey with hearing aids too. And yeah, I definitely remember that. And you were making dinner and I had just ran downstairs, Mom, I did it. And that was a really cool moment.
Before Katie was diagnosed with hearing loss, did you ever know a child with hearing loss?
No.
No.
We did not.
And now, did it surprise you to learn how common it is?
Somewhat, but we still, I'll tell you, I did not find it common in our world where we lived, but coming to the hospital and coming to the clinics, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it did feel so much like, this was not as rare as it felt to us.
And then it turned out that another little girl in Katie's grade at her elementary school was hearing impaired and wore hearing aids and lived one cul-de-sac away. So that provided a bit of a frame of reference because, again, back then, 25 years ago, there's no internet. So you don't have the ability to try to go into Child's Voice or anything else and try to find out information. It was much more difficult to develop it on our own. She had some good audiologists along the way that were very helpful, but it was still, you were kind of on your own back then.
Sure. Now that you're so well educated on the resources that are out there now, what, if you could pick one that's available today, do you wish you had back in 1991?
Just the internet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Just the being able to, spend some time and educate ourselves.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of programs that Katie got involved in. I love Sound Experience that Lurie puts on for kids. I think it's a terrific thing for the kids, for family, for siblings. Different programs that I'm involved in because of some of the things that I do, supportive of Katie and also supporting of the hearing impaired environment of kids. There are music therapies and other things that are available now which weren't available then, which I think are great things for kids, where hearing impaired kids are around other hearing impaired kids, so there's some commonality there. I'm not the only one. It's very isolating, I think, to think you're the only one.
But I think when I reflect back to what your question, just newborn hearing screening, that's what I wish had existed at the time of when Katie was born, so that we would have known earlier.
Mm-hmm. I'm here with Dr. Joy Ringer, who is the clinical coordinator of the diagnostic audiology team at Lurie Children's. Joy, thank you for listening with me today.
Thanks for having me on.
One of the first things I want to ask is for clarification between the different types of testing that Eileen discussed. She talked about Katie going in a booth, and then she talked about Katie being sedated. Can you explain those differences?
Sure. So in the booth, what we call behavioral testing includes about 4 or 5 different tests. Some of them are objective, so the kids don't have to do anything but sit there and be still, which is a tall order for a lot of kids, but younger kids. So we first check to see whether or not we think there could be any sign of fluid or ear infections, and then we go on to do further testing that tests specifically the cochlea or the organ of hearing. And those are tests that either there's a response or there isn't a response, and really the kids aren't showing us what they hear. And then we go on to do a test where we watch them respond to sounds. So it may be a situation where a young child is turning their head when they hear a sound out of a speaker, and we light up a toy and teach them whenever they hear the sound, they get to see the toy. And or for an older child, it might be holding a peg and putting it in when they hear the beeping sound. So then we're literally watching them react to the sound. And if that's not successful and we can't get enough information to rule out hearing loss, then we do something called an auditory brainstem response, or ABR evaluation. And that's an evaluation where they have to be placed under, the kids have to be placed under general anesthesia. And not because it hurts or anything like that, but any muscle movement, even eye movement, will interfere with the test. So the kids are under general anesthesia. We put sticker electrodes on their forehead and earlobes and a sound in through inserts in both ears. So it gives us information about both ears. And we follow that response from the ear all the way up the brain stem. And it will tell us if there is, in fact, a hearing loss or if there's any issue with the sound traveling from the ear up the brainstem. So it gives us good information, again, without the child having to show us how they hear. We monitor those brain waves, find out whether or not that sound is, if the auditory mechanism is working as it should. It does not tell us how they understand the sound, but it does tell us if the ear is working properly.
And I think it's just nice to have a starting point for hearing aids.
Absolutely. It gives us some great information for us to be able to program and set hearing aids. It also can tell us whether or not there's a hearing loss because of fluid behind the eardrums, or if it's a permanent, sensory neural, or takes place in the cochlea, the organ of hearing. So it gives us a lot of good information.
Okay. And Katie and Eileen, they talked about the newborn hearing screening, which Katie missed. Born in '88, she didn't have it. It didn't come around until the '90s. Didn't become more standard until the '90s. Can you share from your experience how the newborn hearing screening affected the age of diagnosis?
It was huge. I've been a pediatric audiologist for over 35 years. So if you think back in the 80s, mid-80s when I started, there wasn't newborn hearing screening, of course. And so kids were identified with hearing loss closer to 18 months to 2.5 years of age when their speech and language was delayed and parents started to really wonder, what's going on. And so we lost a lot of great years for language development and amplification, of course, at that time was, hearing aids were not as good as well and not as easily programmed. So, kids were at a disadvantage on several different levels. Now we can identify hearing loss. It's very, very mild that can also impact hearing loss. And we're also able to tell if there's any kind of neurologic issues going on, which would change a course of treatment for a child if they have hearing loss or there's other issues going on. So it made a very big impact.
Okay. And I feel this field, I'm always humbled by how much the general public doesn't understand about hearing, about that sense in general. I think, and I forget of how much I've learned just being in this field. So when a family hears that diagnosis of hearing loss and understandably says, but my child does hear me, they do turn sometimes, they do have some words or make some sounds, where are some of the best places you recommend to get information or resources?
I definitely love to have parents talk to other parents. So there are local groups that are out there. There's also A.G. Bell. Hands and Voices is an organization that is national. Each state has their own chapter. So I think that's really great. There are lots and lots of different kinds of resources out there that you can find on the internet, but you can also go down this dark hole, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there are a lot of opinions flying out there. So I think it's really great for parents to connect with other parents who are in their shoes, who have been in their shoes. So Lurie Children's has a group called ParentWise, where we can connect families with one another. There's also Sound Experience, which is a parent support group, and it's for kids who are hard of hearing, who have not necessarily met other kids with hearing loss in their school district or in their neighborhood. And it's a way for parents and kids and siblings to connect. and has great advice. Parents are giving good advice at those meetings. And then there's also, through Hands and Voices, there is Guide by Your Side, which is another parent resource. So I think those are the good places to start.
Mm-hmm. So you've seen, thousands of ear molds probably at this point.
Probably.
What's your favorite style or design someone ever did?
Oh my goodness. I've seen every athletic team you can think of. If it's the Bears or Green Bay, I've seen a lot of camo. I've seen a lot of Frozen. I just think it's so wonderful when the kids are creative. And sometimes, they pick colors that are not necessarily what a fashionista would put together. But if they're happy with it, that's fantastic. And I love it when parents are like, okay.
I know. I give them so much credit because I can see them thinking about their picture days coming up or the holidays. They're like, oh, that's going to be in all those pictures.
Exactly. And I've had some kids get if they were going to be a flower girl or whatever, they'll get special ear molds for that.
Oh, that's sweet.
And I it's a real way for them to be creative. And what I love when parents are feel comfortable to let them do that, there's so little that kids have control over, right? Especially a kid with hearing loss. And it's a way for them to take control of something that they, need to wear, have to wear, and are excited about. So I love hearing what they want to put together.
Finally, can we put on the record, do hot dogs cause hearing loss?
I can honestly say, and with great conviction, hot dogs do not cause hearing loss.
Thank you.
So I'm hot dog at Wrigley Field tastes the best anywhere you go. So
that's right.
But especially at Wrigley Field. So I'm
or
pro
guaranteed
hot dog.
or guaranteed rate, depending where you go.
Yeah, that's true.
As long as it's just mustard, right?
Yes. No, mustard and onion, no ketchup.
No ketchup.
No ketchup.
Receiving hearing aids might sound like the end of the story, but it was just the beginning. More on the next episode of Amplified. Thanks for listening. Amplified, presented by Lurie Children's, was created by me, Katie Colella. Music by Les FM. Artwork by Katrina Garaggiolo. Special thanks to Jamie Budzik, Lisa Weber, Joy Ringer, Jen Haney, Danielle Lee, and of course, the Radosevich and Farnsworth families. If you need resources regarding childhood hearing loss, go to luriechildrens.org/audiology-resources. Transcripts of all episodes are available at luriechildrens.org/amplified. Learn more about Katie and the incredible Division of Rehabilitation Services on Instagram at Lurie Rehab Services. That's at LURIE Rehab Services.